China's working on its Made in China 2025 push.
The US is playing with fire, but China has fire too.
Global economic powerhouse.
Young Chinese people are becoming disillusioned with everyday life.
China's mobile payment,
cashless.
in cashless society, all use QR codes.
China. People think I don't like China. I love China.
Hello, 大家好. Welcome to another episode of China. What's the future? As ever, I'm joined by Louisa.
Hello, 大家好.
So today we have a really interesting topic. We want to talk about Douyin, which is a Chinese short video platform, and we thought that if we just mentioned Douyin, not many people would know about it. TikTok is super popular in the West. It's a new upcoming platform, and the relationship to Douyin is that they're owned by the same company called Bytedance, which is now, or more recently, has overtaken Uber as the world's largest startup, I believe, or the world's most valuable startup. And TikTok is essentially inspired by Douyin, or rather, I don't know, maybe it was the other way around, because I remember actually TikTok used to be Musical.ly, and Musical.ly came first, and then Douyin came, and then Musical.ly was acquired by ByteDance to be then changed to TikTok. So there's kind of whole, like, I guess, a cyclical thing of copying, which happens a lot with social media and technology and innovation. So we're not going to be talking too much about the features of Douyin itself. We want to focus more on the audience, more on how people are using Douyin and comparing that to TikTok and what the various user behaviors are on each platform and how that influences how the platform, how the content are created on each platform and what the differences are between those content. So I guess we'll start with the major differences between TikTok and Douyin. I mean, really, if we want to keep it simple, there are only two things that are very similar. Obviously, they're owned by the same company. And then the second thing is just aesthetics. So the front page, when you load up TikTok, looks almost exactly like Douyin or vice versa. But that's where the similarity stops completely, because as soon as you go deeper, the differences become very apparent. So almost everything else is different, right? The UX, the usability, from content to the users. The content is very different, the content mix. The people who are using the platform are very different, how they're kind of absorbing the content, and which leads on to also, I guess, for most people interested in the brand strategy and also the monetization model that each platform has. And we'll go into more details of each one throughout this podcast. But first of all, we want to talk a little bit about the rise of short-form videos. Maybe, Louisa, you can tell audience a little bit on kind of like the stats, which is absolutely amazing, by the way, on how well short-form video is doing in China.
Definitely. So usually we don't really go into much detail with the stats because that's like quite boring. We like to talk about like people and behaviors and cultures and things, but these stats are just incredible. So a total of, I think I said this in the last podcast, a total of 600 million hours a day are spent watching short form videos.
600 million, that's insane. 600 I can't believe
million,
it, a day.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? 600 million hours a day, and it's watched by 820 million users.
Wow.
Across platforms.
So that's across all the platforms that are currently providing short video
Exactly.
format.
So that means that more than 7 in 10 users of mobile phones watch short form videos.
Wow. So
that's pretty insane. That's why we thought we'd talk about some stats before we start, and why is it so popular? Like, why do people watch short form videos instead of maybe turning to Netflix or Netflix equivalents?
Yeah.
Like, why do they watch short form videos? Because we also said last time that it's starting to replace TV, so that people don't really have TVs as hub of the home anymore, but they'd rather prefer to watch short form videos on different sort of platforms. And that's down to low attention span. It's down to the content feed is different, so you don't have to necessarily look for something that you want to watch, but it's just given to you.
And that's quite an important point, actually. I'm just going to jump in quickly here, because this is a huge shift in user behavior, right? Because we're going from fed content that you want to watch in a TV, where you have very little choice between just kind of like a few or several channels, to video on demand, which you have more choice, but You have people like Netflix and Amazon Prime that are essentially using AI to give you recommendations, but you choose from those recommendations, similar to YouTube, where you can choose from recommendations based on what you like. And Douyin was the first platform that took that to the next level, in a sense that the choice is being taken away completely from the user, and it's now AI dictated content 100%. As when you scroll, you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
It's not a recommendation. You're just given the content that the AI thinks that you like to see.
That you like based on previous engagement. So if you click like, or if you like watch a certain type of video, then that's what you're being fed. That's what you can watch. So you can end up spending really 600 million hours a day watching these videos because it's just endless. It just keeps going, and it's all stuff that's interesting to you.
And it's really, their prediction is really amazing. So some of us have Douyin in the office, and you have to have a Chinese app account to download it on iOS. And the content on there is amazing. It's so in tune with what you want, and not just the things that you watch directly, but also indirectly. It kind of like understands what your hobbies might be based on what you've watched already. So for example, if you've been watching videos about cooking, it'll start recommending you videos about, I don't know, like ingredients, or like it tries to work out, I guess, from their huge array of data, what people are relating to, what hobbies and what interests.
And you can then always click on like hashtags or related topics, and that will take you to more recommendations and more similar videos.
And then obviously the more you do, the smarter it gets, and then the better your recommendation gets, and the more addictive it gets, which is very dangerous.
Yeah, so I think it depends on a different type of motivation. Like when you go on the app and you just want to relax, and in China that's a very big motivation, because there's so much time. Like we hear a lot about time spent at work and all the pressures, and time spent at school, that they hardly have any free time to actually unwind.
Yeah.
So if you go on the app with the motivation to relax, then you'll just stick on this feed and you'll just keep scrolling. But if you have a motivation, like for example, you want to see a review, or you want to look for a different specific type of brand, then you type that in, and then you get loads and loads of things related to that.
Specifically, exactly. Yeah. Just quickly going back to the platforms, I think it's worth mentioning to our audience, although Douyin is the most dominant short-form video platform in China, it's not the only one, and it's only actually, we're going to put a picture up on the screen here for those of you who are watching the video of breakdown of each of the companies who are owning the short video platforms. So the first one is Bytedance, which owns no less than 3 short-form video platforms. Douyin, which is one that we always talk about, and it has 486 million monthly active users. And then Xigua, aptly named Watermelon in Chinese, has 130 million active users, monthly active users. And then Huoshan, Fire Mountain, strange name, has 100 million
volcano. Huoshan.
Monthly active. Yeah, sorry, volcano. I translated directly. And then there's Kuaishou, which is owned by Kuaishou. But Louisa, you mentioned earlier that Tencent might be interested in acquiring, investing in
Tencent is the company behind WeChat. They already have their own short-form video apps, so they have like Weishu and another one. But they want to expand their range of short-form video apps, so they want to invest in Kuaishou. And I think it's between $1 and $1.5 billion that they're aiming to invest.
Is that what they're talking about right now?
That's what they're talking about, exactly. So Kuaishou is actually quite different to Douyin in terms of users. So Douyin is more targeted to first and second tier city users, whereas Kuaishou is more lower tier cities, so it's like tier 3, tier 4. And also the content is quite different. So the quality of content on Douyin is a lot better than it is on Kuaishou. Like Kuaishou
it feels like it's more evolved and more mature content.
Exactly.
And I guess that we'll talk about this later, and how that compares to TikTok as well.
Yeah.
So Tencent has already, you just mentioned, already has a platform, 2 platforms actually, with just over 100 million users between the 2 platforms. So Kuaishou has 340 million monthly active users.
Yeah, and they want to get to 300 million daily active users.
Which
is what Douyin already has. Douyin already has 320 20 billion daily active
I mean, these
users.
numbers are insane. We're talking about like 300 million daily active users, like it's
crazy.
nothing. It's just mind blowing. So that would obviously put Tencent in a very good position to actually compete with Bytedance, because then they would have an actual chance to catch up with them. And then finally, there's Baidu, who has two platforms, very small short video platforms. One is called Huoshan, has about 69 million monthly active users. Again, all of these numbers have risen significantly over the last year compared to last year to this year. For example, just take out the Tencent one, the Weishou. It looks like it went from something like 10 million to 100 million in a year's time.
Yeah, it's
monthly
ridiculous.
active users.
Just goes up and up and
Absolutely
up.
Crazy. It just shows how popular this platform is and why and how it's here to stay. And I guess next, this is kind of leads nicely onto us. We should be talking maybe a little bit about the users and why we think short form video has made such a big impact more recently in the last year. So you talked earlier about the user. Maybe we should just quickly compare that between TikTok and Douyin. So I think TikTok, everyone has this impression in the West of the user being very, I guess, very, very young. So it's normally like teenagers, and they have the reputation of cringing kind of bedroom dancing.
Yeah.
And it's not really something where you can get mature content that you feel like you're learning or you feel like that's opening your mind up.
No, so one, like, for example, because I don't have Douyin, I only have TikTok, unfortunately. I wish I had Douyin because it's a lot better. But if I open my TikTok and I go through, one video that's really popular at the moment is young girls, guessing they're about 12 or so, and they're saying, "Why am I single?" And it's just them like standing there dancing with their hands. It's called like shou wu or something, I'm not sure, in Chinese, but that's like a really like gesture dancing is really popular on TikTok. These kind of things, and you watch them and you're just like, oh my god, this is so
cringe,
cringy, and
it?
they just want all they want is like validation from their friends
Attention,
and to create things.
You almost don't get that at all on Douyin. I think it started off as a platform like that where there's a lot of kind of younger guys and girls dancing around, doing kind of like challenges. But then it very quickly evolved as more people came onto the platform into a place where you can, I guess it's more kind of like talent dominated rather than imitation dominated, which is where TikTok is right now. So Douyin, everyone's on there, everything from kind of like chefs to nutritionists to philosophers to musicians, videographers,
artists.
Artists. You can learn about cooking. You can learn about. You can pretty much learn about anything you want to on Douyin. There's a lot of. I'm really into watching like guitar videos. Not that I'm playing the guitar. I just like to think I'm learning. So it feels a lot like YouTube actually. You're like watching something. And then,
but it's a lot more bite-sized because it's only about 15 seconds.
And also you're getting fed it rather than you having to go through the effort of choosing what content you want to watch next.
Exactly. So it's super, super useful for learning all sorts of things.
So I guess that means the people who are using Douyin are also very different to TikTok. So again, TikTok is a very young audience, whereas Douyin is probably a lot more mature. I'm guessing we're looking at people who are...
think about 10 years older. So whereas I think TikTok would be about 14, under 14,
so people who are born
like
after the noughties. Yeah. Whereas on Douyin is probably more people who are born after the 90s.
After the 90s, so it's like 24 and below. So a users age 24 and below account for, I think, 50% of the users on TikTok. And then the others might, on Douyin, sorry.
On Douyin,
and then the others might be older. So quite millennial and Gen Z dominated, not just Gen Z.
Whereas TikTok is probably more Gen Z and less millennial. So I guess this leads nicely onto how the user motivations, kind of why the short form video platform and the way that Douyin and TikTok is feeding the content to users is attractive and why it's becoming so popular. So earlier we were talking about user gratification. Louise, maybe you can explain that a bit to the audience on what your theory of that is.
So the user's gratification theory is basically says that if you gratify the motivations of the users to use a certain platform, then they are a lot more likely to engage with your content. So say, for example, users go to Douyin to be entertained, and then a brand produces a very entertaining advert, then that gratifies their initial motivations to use the app, and they'll be happy and engaging with the content. So
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, I think we talked about this briefly. Sometimes you'd be using Douyin, and the ads are really smart on Douyin. Sometimes you'd be using it, scrolling through, and you're like halfway through this video, and you don't even realize it's an ad.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, because it's all still AI based, so it matches with your interests. So if I'm watching videos about gaming, it'll feed me like a gaming advert.
Exactly.
That's in the same format as the other video I'm watching. And then all of a sudden you realize you're watching an ad. You're like, whoa, this game looks awesome. I want to play this. And then you kind of been sucked in without even knowing it.
Which makes it really easy for brands, because they can just produce a certain type of content which is in line with their brand and their product messaging, whatever, and then the AI will automatically feed it in with the
rest of the
content.
content. So it's very seamless in the content flow, in the kind of the feed that users are receiving. And that's actually a really, thank you, Louise, that's a really important tip, I think, for brands as well, to remember that whereas on TikTok you might want to create content as a brand that's kind of very fun and very off the cuff and very, I guess, very Gen Z and very youth focused. Whereas on Douyin, if you're going to China, you want to do something very different. Mm-hmm. If you want to fit in with the rest of the content stream, you want to create content that's a lot more educational, maybe sometimes, or
high quality. Definitely.
Higher quality. I guess a little bit more serious than the stuff you might create for TikTok. Definitely more serious. Because people that watch TikTok videos, they want to get something from Douyin videos. They want to get something from it. Keep getting confused between TikTok and Douyin. I know, it's easily done. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about, we said we won't go into details about the feature, but maybe just kind of like briefly touch on some of the features that are in Douyin that doesn't exist in TikTok. So, for example, e-commerce is a big one.
Yes, huge.
Do you want to quickly explain that to the audience?
Yeah, so whereas on TikTok, you would just watch videos and not really go any further than just watching the videos, on Douyin, it's a lot more integrated with e-commerce. So you can watch something and then a product will be linked, and you can see now, buy now basically. So you see the product that's linked, you can click on it and you can buy it immediately. Or you can click on it and you can see other related videos, or you can see related products, and then you can decide sort of which one you want to buy, if you'd want to buy one. It's the same with Xiaohongshu, Little Red Book, but Little Red Book is still a lot more focused on images rather than videos. And so it's all very, very seamless. I'm
going to give an example here. I'm going to go back to food. You guys probably noticed the theme that we talk about food a lot. So what Louise just said is really interesting, because you can now essentially accompany. It's basically an ad, but it's not an ad because it's a content that people want to see anyway. So for example, I had one that's really good where this guy who's on the countryside making this like kind of like chili sauce with like beef, and it sounds so tasty already. And he shows you how he makes it. So he'll like cut the beef up, he'll like fry it, and he'll put in like chili, the ginger and the garlic. And then you're like, oh my God, I wish I could have that right now. And then I looked on the side, and you can have that. You can literally buy that. You can buy the sauce he's making. It comes in a little bottle. And you know, in China, you can probably have that in like 2 hours. It's just so amazing it is. You just, it's like a full integration of content and e-commerce. And it's a very seamless integration that you don't really get in the West because you don't have the platform for it.
And it links directly to Taobao or WeChat. So you can just pay through your WeChat wallet.
You pay straight away. It'll come to you probably the same day. And before you know it, you're eating this for dinner because you watched the video at lunchtime. And I think that's absolutely amazing.
It's just enabling e-commerce. So rather than just seeing something and thinking, oh, this is cool, which you would do on, Instagram has now integrated the buy now button as well, but it's not quite as seamless, not quite as easy, not as obvious. Whereas on TikTok, if you see something you like, in theory, you could just buy it immediately.
You can just buy it. And because it's quite new on Instagram, a lot of it is not, the content is not integrated as well as the product.
It just looks like an advert.
Yeah, exactly. It just looks like an advert. It's like a picture of a shoe or something.
Yeah.
Whereas on Douyin, it's and I think that's a future of social media, right? And we talk a lot about social commerce, and it's about taking the best part of social media and the best part of e-commerce and combining it together, rather than trying to stuff a bit of social into e-commerce site or a bit of e-commerce into a social media site. It's like, how do we actually integrate content? And I think Douyin has done that really well, because again, it's kind of using the content that you want to see anyway,
Yes.
and providing the products that you want after you've watched that content. Everything just seems kind of very, very seamless.
Yeah, definitely. And it doesn't have to be created by the brand itself. It could be created by a content creator. I'm saying content creator, not really KOL, because KOL or key opinion leader or influencers, it's all like quite a confusing / complicated field in China, because there's so many different types of influencers, whereas over here we just use a broad term of influencers.
Yeah.
In China, you've got celebrities, you've got key opinion leaders, you've got like sort of grassroots influencers. And on Douyin, I just call them content creators, because it could be anyone. It could be a primary school teacher, it could be some artist from
Could be like
wherever.
a granddad.
Could be a granddad.
Who's giving us his wisdom.
Could be the little.
I get
the
quite
little,
a lot of that,
The little
actually.
fat boy that eats and you keep saying, 真行啊.
That sounds like TikTok content.
No, it's really good. So, and it's so easy, because if you see one of these content creators and you think, oh, their videos is really cool, you go on their profile and you see more of their videos and you think, oh, this would fit really well with my brand, and it gets high engagement, then you can message them directly. So it leads to a platform called like Xingtu. And you can literally just message the content creator directly and collaborate with them. So it's really, really easy for brands.
And I believe Douyin facilitates all of the conversations, right? So there's no like third party who's in the middle.
No, it's directly linked.
Which I think actually is a good thing, because it keeps everything a lot more... it keeps the number of middlemen to a minimum. So you're working with the platform and with the creators, rather than working through like 3 different agencies.
Yeah.
Where everyone's
really
kind of taking a cut.
involved.
It's much better for economy and for kind of value and efficiency perspective as well. Do we think, for example, TikTok is going to evolve into Douyin eventually, or do we think that the reason TikTok is like TikTok is because of the user behaviors in the West? So China historically has always had a heavy lean towards meritocracy. It was one of the first civilizations in history to have meritocracy, in the sense that if you wanted, everyone went through like this imperial exam, right? And if you scored high points on the imperial exam, you would have a job with the government, or kind of the local governments that would then report to the imperial courts. It's all very based on your abilities. Even though it was a dictatorship, it was still based on your abilities, and people had the opportunity to rise up in the ranks if you were like really smart at if you were very academically strong, or and you were very smart. So I think that's kind of like that tradition has almost been passed down generations, and China has always very strong focus on education, academia, learning. So when Douyin came out, it was a platform for people to be able to share their talent, share what they can do. So I mentioned earlier, you can find loads of videos where people are talking about philosophy, sometimes inspired by history. People are teaching people how to cook. Everyone knows food is a big thing in China. There are videos of teaching you how to play music, even how to sing, videos of teaching you how to like even drive. Basically, a lot of it is education focused. And it's all very useful videos. Or, on the other side, you have people who are essentially using a platform to show the world their talent. So rather than teaching, they're showing. So it's kind of like people that are really good, maybe like undiscovered musicians who are using this as a platform. Whereas on TikTok, rather than talent and education and creator and maker focused, it seems to be very kind of commentary focused or kind of imitation focused, right? It's because we were talking earlier about how it's people dancing in their bedrooms, imitating a challenge, or it's kind of very young people who are
showing off their looks.
Or kind of very, it feels very lifestyle focused,
Yeah.
rather than the other end, which is education, talent, maker, and creator.
One of the biggest
I think
differences
there's a global
is that
movement
the search
to
function is
change,
completely different.
a global movement
on
of
TikTok
change in the
versus
influence
Douyin. So
industry, going back to people with more focus with people with with actual talent, who can create content, who can produce things, rather than people who are just commenting on their lifestyles. And I think for brands, they need to be looking at what the best way is to work with creators and makers rather than people who are just influencers. So we have this concept of rather than borrowing reach from what influencers are nowadays, to creating co-branded content and collaborations by focusing on what talent and makers are good at, who might not have the reach, and then brands focusing on what they're good at, which is marketing and creating the reach. And then hopefully you have something that's authentic, that comes from the people who are living the subcultures, the communities, and the interest groups.
Yeah.
So just going back to just quickly touch upon features before we move on to conversation about brands. I think it's important to, again, we're not going to kind of like go into details of the features, but there is something that's very different. And on Douyin, you have search and trends, which is something that doesn't exist on TikTok. So maybe, Louisa, you can explain that to our audience, how this works on Douyin.
Douyin, you type in a certain thing and then it takes you to a ranking. So you'd have, for example, you look for a brand and then you get to a ranking page of these are the top 10 brands within this industry, like within automobile or within luxury brands or makeup brands, and then you'd have the top ranking brands on Douyin, and you can click on, like, for example, Dior is top ranking on luxury brands. And then you click on Dior, you can see all their related content, products, whatever, and then you can see who they sort of rank with. But that doesn't exist on TikTok. Like, you can't find any kind of ranking. And this is really, really important in China because people go by what's ranked the highest and what's the most popular. They want to know the latest trends. So it's not just the brand ranking or industry ranking, it's also topic rankings, hashtag rankings, like what's trending, what's popular, what's the latest news. And that just doesn't exist on TikTok.
It feels like a very functional feature, whereas TikTok feels a lot more casual.
Yeah.
Douyin, especially with this, it feels a lot more functional, where you can actually explore what you might want to buy next, what topic you want to kind of like look into next. And it just feels like it's a lot more feature rich, in a sense that you're not literally just watching a bunch of people lip syncing.
Yeah, and you can dive in from different, so say for example something's trending on Weibo, it's probably also trending on Douyin, I think. So you'd like type in the same hashtag as on Weibo, you have hashtag rankings and stuff, and you can see what the country's talking about, what everyone's talking about in China, and you want to participate in the conversation. And you can type this hashtag into Douyin and you'd probably find similar trending videos related to this topic and this hashtag. So you can always join in with the conversation. It's so much more social.
It's a good point to move on to the next topic, and I want to talk about the way that Chinese platforms are monetizing their platforms in relationship to working with brands. A lot of Western platforms are very advertising heavy. So we know that Facebook get 80 to 90% of their revenue from advertising, whereas Douyin, we know WeChat gets most of their revenue from service and utilities. And now Douyin probably get most of their revenue from users. We haven't even talked about this. This is very important. From users purchasing virtual coins, and then they can give to their live streamers as almost like a tip or a gift.
Yeah.
And this is how they generate most of their revenue. It's providing a service to the user, but enable better interaction between live streaming and live streamers and their users, rather than shoving ads down people's faces and monetizing people's data. Chinese platforms have found a way to use the data to create a better service for its users, and then in turn integrating a monetization model that strengthens that bond between the users and the content creators, or between the platform and the users in WeChat's case. And I think that's a really smart move, because rather than being intrusive, you're helping the users. It goes back to what you were saying earlier about the gratification thing. So if you can make something that the users would want to come onto and stay, rather than kind of like avoid because there are too much ads. It's going to be better for everyone, better for the brands, better for the platform, and better for the users.
And it's so easy as a brand to just open an account. Even just you don't have to be a recognized brand. You can just be a normal user who wants to open an account and integrate e-commerce. So you can open your own store once you have 10 videos or more, and it's a really simple process. So all you do is just a very quick registration process.
So again, it feels like there's a low barrier to entry. It's very meritocracy focused. If you're like a small brand and you create great products, and that's why I was talking about the chili sauce thing earlier, because that's just like one guy, maybe like a few guys who are just passionate about creating this single product. And then he's made an insane video that's gone viral because it looks delicious.
Yeah, and the fact that you've seen it over here and you're not even in the country, you have no idea which province he is, who he is, but you've seen his video.
And I want that chili sauce.
I mean, that's just amazing.
And it's not like a big brand, right? Like anyone can do that. If you're creating great content, you can also get the virality that maybe someone like Dior or Burberry might get.
Yeah, so these brand accounts, for example, they don't really exist on TikTok globally. So, for example, you look for Dior, which, as I mentioned, is top ranking on Douyin in luxury brands. On TikTok, it doesn't really exist. So I tried to find an account, couldn't really find one.
Yeah.
And that's just, to me, a massive missed opportunity. But then again, it's not something that the users are looking for. Whereas Chinese users would definitely look for certain brands.
I think it's just a case of content maturity. I think once the platform evolves a little bit more and the content evolves out of the kind of like lip syncing and bedroom dancing, then it'll start to be more mature, and then maybe they'll start to open it up to brands. But the point I was going to make, I remember now, thank you, Louisa, is that I think there's this myth going around. When you're entering China, you should focus on WeChat, you should focus on Weibo, and people always forget about other platforms, whereas Douyin is actually a really new platform where you can still gain organic traction rather than pay to play. And people forget that on there you could create content that's integrated with your product. So not only can you create content that has a chance to actually organically gain huge amounts of reach, you can also link that directly to e-commerce and to your products and for people to purchase your products. So this is a huge missed opportunity, and I think brands really need to consider looking at Douyin as one of their first, if not the first platform that they go into when they get onto, when they're looking to get into China.
And they don't have to worry about their image. So, for example, I keep using Dior, but it's just a really good example. You go on their feed and you see really nice polished contents, really like, these beautiful haute couture videos, and it's just a really beautiful feed on the Dior account. But then you type in Dior and you find related products, which is produced by content creators, then that's not going to appear necessarily on your feed, but it will appear as with tagged products. So your feed is your brand image, basically. And it's a really nice, it's the image that you want to portray as a brand, but you can push your products or other things via the external content on Douyin. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. The first thing I think is the future of content, so that we will be moving from a network-led content that's semi-interest-based, platform-dictated, and choice-based, to something that is completely interest-based and algorithm-dictated, where the choice is taken away from you. So again, you're seeing this on stuff like YouTube, on Amazon Prime, on Netflix, where you're given content that the platform thinks you might be interested in, and you select it based on what you actually want to watch. So you're making like micro decisions like every time you watch a video. Whereas on Douyin, that's not going to happen, because you just get one video fed to you one after another based on what the algorithm thinks you like. I think we're moving towards that model for pretty much all the platforms, and I won't be surprised to see Instagram has the discovery feature where you can kind of like see that rather than your social media feed being your homepage. I wouldn't be surprised to see in the future that discovery page becoming your homepage.
Yeah, I'm not so sure in the West though, because we like to keep things nice and private. So me, for example, on Instagram, I'm only really interested in the stuff that my friends post. That's why I follow them.
So you think
I'm private. I can only.
That's interesting. So you think because of kind of like I guess the independent culture versus the collective culture, you still think it'll be more focused around network-driven content
I think
rather
so.
than interest-based. There's a lot of conversations in the West about influencer fraud, and it's even worse in China. I don't know if you guys seen, we'll show a quick video here on screen again for those of you who are watching this, of the click farms in China. You can see people are essentially having hundreds and hundreds of mobile phones on a factory floor and clicking, which I guess is like real engagement because there's someone there clicking it, but at the same time, it's like completely fake, obviously. And what we said earlier, and I think this will change globally, not just in China, maybe starting from China, is that we're going to see the death of social influencers and the rise of social creators. So in a sense that we'll get less and less people who are just commenting to people who are actually creating and people who have experience of creating.
Something else that I'm really, really interested to see in the future is the battle between the platforms. So
Between the platforms.
the battle between the platforms. So, for example, the battle between Tencent and Bytedance is going to become really intense. If Tencent does invest in Kuaishou, that's going to be really, really interesting. Because the battle at the moment, it's like they say it's a wild west, don't they?
It's
between Baidu and Alibaba, Tencent.
But the short form video genre is still very kind of much of a monopoly, and ByteDance dominates it.
Yeah.
Which means, actually, that's a very good point, because when there is a second platform, it normally pushes for innovation. So we'll see new and better things.
Yeah, and different content as well. So what I read about Kuaishou's plan is that they're planning to invest more in gaming content.
Ah, interesting.
Yes, so they're going
because
like
that's
gaming,
Tencent's
live
pedigree.
streaming and things like that. Yeah, so that's going to be interesting to see whether that's going to suck up a lot of the users, and maybe they'll
might
move
consolidate
from
on different platforms.
Yeah, because if they're good at gaming, right, then people from Douyin will maybe switch over to Kuaishou to watch gaming videos.
Again, I think we can talk for days about this.
Yes.
We haven't even touched on kind of like live streaming.
Oh, we haven't talked about the travel trends.
We haven't talked about a lot of the trends, but we'll be making videos in the future. And there's one thing that I want to ask our audience. We'll be doing a lot more of these platform series in the future going forward. So looking at various platforms, the behaviors, the content, the users, and the features behind each platform. And it'll be great to hear from our audience on what you think we should do the next one on. So email us on chinawtf@Qumin.co.uk with your comments, your thoughts, and your suggestions. We would love to hear from you. Definitely. See you next time, guys.
See you.